creating a new category of extreme athlete, becoming a multi-time world champion, and what it's like to fly with Jon Devore, captain of the Red Bull Air Force. All right. Hey ho, let's go. This is Legends and Losers. Scott Lowry says this is the podcast that is the missing link. Sean Douglas says the energy is raw, the emotions are raw, and the content is raw. And Pat Grady says as much as Play Bigger is required reading, Legends and Losers is required listening. Now, on this podcast, or as we like to say, Oddcast, we aspire to have authentic dialogues that inspire you to design a legendary business and a legendary life. And if you're brand new to Legends and Losers, welcome aboard, and I hope somebody warned you. And if you're a regular listener, namaste. Thanks for hanging out. Now, there's this John Mayer song that I think is really great called Gravity. And in the chorus, John sings, "Gravity is working against me, and gravity just wants to bring me down." Well, our guest today, Jon Devore, uses gravity as his engine. That's what he calls it. He's a true category designer in that when he started in his chosen field of, you might want to think about it as just flying or parachute sports or aerial sports, or we'll get into some of the other names, but he flies for a living. But when he got into parachuting and decided he wanted to make this stuff his living, there really wasn't any way to do that. And so he really is a true pioneer in this sport and a category designer, because you're going to find out he makes a hell of a living doing this, as do many others. And so he is one of the few pioneers who turned a love for parachuting and wingsuit flying into a job and a sport. And John is a category designer and category king. And I've been dying to share this episode with you because he's so fun, he's so generous, and he tells us what it's like to fly. He tells us what it's like to perform in these incredible films and open up rock and roll shows and so forth. And so let me tell you just a little bit about him. He's an educator, performer, and 100% visionary. He's a professional skydiver and wingsuiter and base jumper. He's a professional cameraman, stuntman, and movie stunt coordinator and team leader. He is the captain of the Red Bull Air Force. John has 19 years of experience and more than 17,000 skydives and 500 base jumps / wingsuit jumps. And by the way, if you're not familiar with these wingsuits, sometimes they're called squirrel suits. They're made of this highly technical fabric, and men and women jump out of planes. Sometimes they jump off the side of cliffs or even buildings, and they pop these things open, and there's this think about like a bat wing or a squirrel that connects their elbow to the suit, and they fly. If you go to YouTube and type in wingsuit, you'll see, or why not just type in Jon Devore and you'll see. It's an incredible thing. They fly at, in some cases, over 200 miles an hour. So John is a 2-time world champion, a 3-time national champion, and he's been the captain of the Red Bull Air Force stunt team for over 17 years. As a young kid, he survived life-threatening bone marrow disease, and as a stuntman, he once survived a 100-mile-an-hour crash into a mountain when a filming stunt went wrong. Now, have you seen any of these giant, big-budget movies where people are flying over the last decade or so? It is almost a guarantee that it was John and his team. He's worked as the stunt coordinator, skydiver, aerial or aerial stunt athlete in Godzilla, Fast and the Furious 7, The Hangover Part 2, Iron Man, Iron Man 3, Transformers, Dark of the Moon, The Dark Knight, Point Break, and others. And now the legendary Jon Devore is on Legends and Losers. So, John, what's it like to fly?
It's kind of the coolest thing in the world. It's really addictive. It's one of those things that It's not for everybody, but you're either completely hooked or you check it off your list. And it's really hard to explain unless you've done it, but it's pure freedom. The moment you exit a cliff or a plane or whatever, that whether it's a 10-second flight, a 2-minute flight, everything turns off, and it's a real special place to be.
And how old were you when you knew you wanted to spend a great part of your life flying?
It wasn't until I was about 17 with my fake ID. I went skydiving because you're supposed to be 18, and ever since then,
Are you a nefarious bastard, John?
I plead the fifth. Uh, yeah, it was. I was hooked right away. I was wanting to open an adventure tourism business growing up in Alaska, and wanted to offer skydiving. So I went to get my tandem rating so I could take people on jumps. And after I made my first jump, I kind of just did a hard left turn and turned skydiving into my life.
So I just want to make sure I understand, John. You knew you wanted to you wanted to open a skydiving business in Alaska before you did your first jump. Is that what you just said?
Not necessarily. I was trying to open. You ever know those kid books, the Choose Your Own Adventure, where you get to the end of a chapter and you can take a left or a right at the road, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
So I wanted to open an adventure tourism business because at a young age, as I was already certified in whitewater rafting and climbing and glacier exploring and blah, blah, blah.
And did
And
you ski too as well growing up? Or
yeah, you bet.
snowboard? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
both.
just all the backcountry sports that I would think a guy like you might do. You probably did, right?
Yeah. So I did all that. And I decided I worked for a river raft company out of a glacier river there, and saw that guy killing it, making a ton of money. And so I was like, okay, college isn't really, I'll go there, get some business skills, but I want to open an adventure tourism business. But I also wanted to offer skydiving because it didn't exist in Alaska. So I went to get my skydive cert and kind of put everything else on the back burner because I found the sport when kind of what snowboarding did to skiing when it came into the world. There was a whole new discipline of skydiving being invented. It wasn't around yet. And I was lucky enough to move to the right drop zone in Arizona where there was a couple guys trying to invent this, and I joined onto their team. And that's what really propelled me into professional skydiving. Is I was one of 10 guys for a long time that could fly what we call now free flying, and then it was just vertical flight where it's really 3-dimensional and not just falling on your bellies in a formation.
Is that the difference between, and you're going to have to excuse me, I haven't done any of this shit.
No
Um,
worries.
is that the difference between a parachute and a wingsuit?
No. A wingsuit is just a way to get max glide ratio in flying. So if I jump in just shorts and a t-shirt and a parachute on my back, I can get into a tracking position and fly around the sky and get about a 1-to-1 glide slope. But you throw a wingsuit on, you can get that to a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 glide slope. So it really descends or slows down your descent, and you're going forward way faster. So it's just it's steroids for your naked body is all a wingsuit is.
And now that you do so much, do you just call it wingsuiting? Is that what you call it?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the slang kind of in the sport, they say going squirrel suit, but yeah, wingsuit is the
Yeah,
right.
I've heard the squirrel suit, the definition or the lingo. But now, so when you're parachuting and you're not using your wingsuit, do you feel like you've gone from driving a Shelby Cobra Mustang to driving a beat up old Chevy? Or
No,
how do you distinguish between the two experiences for you now?
yeah, when you're jumping a wingsuit, you feel much more like, you feel like you're a fighter jet because you have mass power. You really see that you're cruising through the sky. You can cover miles and miles, so you can jump out and see the ground going by and really identify that you're hauling ass across the ground. But it's really, the comparison is they're both Ferraris. You fly your naked body and you can fly, for that matter, faster. The fastest I've ever gone vertical going down is 317 miles an hour. And so if you're not with a wingsuit, you're freer to fly around and be more artistic and fly around people, over, take off. Where wingsuits, you're kind of like you're in a straight jacket, but a powerful one.
So you're not doing a dipsy doodle in the wingsuit.
Yeah, no. I'm not sure what a dipsy doodle is, but no, I'm not doing it.
Like I don't know, like if you were doodling with a pen, but with your
No, I
body in
know.
the air.
For sure. Yeah, you can try, but yeah, wingsuit's limiting in some aspects, just like not having one on is limiting. It depends on what you're trying to pull off in the sky.
And do you happen to know off the top of your head how fast does a motorcycle, the professional motorcycle racer guys, how fast are they going? Do you know?
I don't know I mean, exacts, but I know easily, just under 200, if not, I know 180 and stuff's not a foreign number for him to hit.
Yeah, those were sort of the ranges in my mind, maybe the low 200s. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but you're going 100 mile an hour faster than, I mean, I'm going to Google it right now to scratch my curiosity. But I mean, you're going a lot faster than guys
For the
on
fastest
motorcycles.
non-motorized sport in the world and faster than most motorized sports for sure. Yeah, I mean the fastest I've gone, that's not how you fly typically. If we do the free flying, not the wingsuits where we're just slick but vertical, we average about 160, 170, and that's just normal flying, and you can go way faster. And wingsuiting, you only go down at about 40, 45 miles an hour, but you're going forward at 120 plus, and you can go faster as well if you wanted to.
So on Wikipedia, they say Grand Prix motor racing, 250 kilometers an hour, 155 miles an hour.
Yeah, I think
The top
180 is
speed
like
in the
top.
history of MotoGP is 224 miles an hour, 361 km.
Yeah,
Top speed by Van, Ventino
Rossi.
Rossi in
Yeah,
1996.
he's the doctor. He's amazing.
There you go. Isn't it great? The internet, you can just type in anything you want and you just immediately know that shit.
Yeah, makes you feel smart.
Wasn't that way when I was a kid? You had to get the World Book Encyclopedia out
Oh yeah.
and hope that Antony was in there. Anyway, I digress. Now, so you start with parachuting, yes,
Yeah, just typical skydiving.
and
Every discipline still has a parachute on your back. You're not landing wingsuits. You're still deploying a parachute. So everything depends on a parachute still at the end of your flight.
when you land the wingsuit, what altitude are you when you engage the parachute?
It depends if you're skydiving or base jumping. It's two completely different worlds. Skydiving, the rules of skydiving at a normal drop zone say you have to deploy a parachute by 2,500 feet above the ground or somewhere within that. But that's crazy high, but it keeps it really safe and regulated where idiots aren't going to do dumb stuff. But base jumping, I mean, it's as low as a couple hundred feet, safely. I don't like to pull much lower than 400 feet base jumping, but there's plenty of times I have. And the equipment's built different. So base jumping parachutes are meant to come out and almost like a car crash, wham, open up and little whiplash car crash, but you enjoy that car crash because the ground was about to hit you. So,
So a little bit of a neck adjustment is nothing compared to splot, right?
yeah, exactly. I'll take the hit every day.
Now, do you have chiropractic bills or not? Because you're always getting readjusted with the entry.
I'm a member of Massage Envy, a chiropractic clinic, acupuncture, yoga, whatever it takes.
You do whatever it takes.
Doctor says I have an 85-year-old neck, so
Wow. How
I
old are
also
you,
wear the
John?
big 42.
Yeah.
So my neck's twice his age, twice my age.
And you've had some what can only be described as horrific, terrifying accidents in your life, right? The accidents in this sport are non-trivial.
Yeah, it's compared to most sports like BMX and skating, whatever. You can crash all day doing those. You might break some bones, but in our sport, in general, the crash can be fatal. If it's not fatal, it's very severe compared to most sports. So
But
you don't crash.
if I'm not mistaken, you've crashed at very high speeds, have you not?
Yeah. I had a long time ago, back in 2001, I had one of those unbelievable type of stories where I was doing a stunt for a Disney movie, and without going into the whole story, jumped out of a helicopter 6,000 feet above a mountain. Without going into technical why, I ended up getting wrapped up in my lines and parachute and in my skis and all that, and basically fell towards earth going pretty much free fall speeds. I had enough garbage out, no parachute open, but it probably slowed me down to 100 miles an hour compared to 120 or something. But I took that straight into a mountaintop. Definitely thought I was a dead man, and kind of everything went black, but not silent in my mind for a little bit. But after I hit, I woke up and I was totally fine. Not a single injury.
So I just want to make sure I understood what you just said there, Big Johnny. You hit the side of a mountaintop at 100 miles an hour after jumping off it, and you were fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was
It's
anything broken?
nothing. Nothing. The only thing that happened at all
Wow.
physically, and it's really strange, is from my neck down to my ankles for about a month long, I broke out in a full body rash, and all the doctors just said that was chemicals my body releases when it thinks it's dying, and all these kind of medical things that I didn't know how to take. But that was the only thing that happened to me, was a body rash for
You
about a month.
developed a rash?
It's stress rash or something they were calling it.
This,
But that was it.
this
Yeah, I
is
stood
terrible
up.
of me, but you weren't spending time with nefarious ladies or something, because that could cause a rash.
No, 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 not at all.
Wow. And so, I mean, maybe a crazy question, but how does that make you feel when so many of your, I don't know what you want to call them, colleagues who have similar experiences, don't live to tell the tale?
Yeah, it's when it happened, it was kind of a surreal thing for about a year, and then I kind of convinced myself maybe I'm living in a parallel life where maybe it didn't go so well, but my conscience went on and kept another life going. I don't know. Yeah, I have no explanation for it. I definitely just feel super lucky. I've been really lucky my whole life. So,
And have you had a major accident since then?
not to that extent. Nope. I've had very close calls, but nothing major.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many parachute jumps have you done the first time you decide you're going to get in that wingsuit and fly around like Superman?
How many have I done
Yeah.
before I started wingsuiting?
Yeah. So if you take me back into your
Yeah.
career, yeah.
Yeah. Well, wingsuiting wasn't really around when I started my career. So by the time I was wingsuiting, I probably had around 10,000 jumps already.
Yeah.
Where today skydive centers tell people you have to get 250 jumps before you can wingsuit. So it's kind of a whole different world now for the
You
sport.
had
But
10,000 and they say you need 250 now.
yeah, yeah. And I didn't have 10,000 because I was waiting to do it. It's just the suits weren't around yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And is it fair to call wingsuiting a sport, John?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, it's a discipline of skydiving.
Okay. So is skydiving sort of the mega category of sport, and then wingsuiting is a subcategory? Is that how I should think about it?
Yeah, yeah. It's people might answer it a little different because some people are really hardcore, just base jumpers, and they don't go skydiving out of airplanes.
Yeah.
And they also wingsuit, so they might argue like it's two different sports, but really flying your human body, human flight, deploying a parachute, it all came from the world of skydiving, and everything else. I mean, even base jumping, everything else splintered from the sport of skydiving.
And so you're 10,000 dives in, and if you could take me back in time, what's happening? When do you first hear about wingsuiting, and how does that become a thing in your world? And then what's it like the first time you do the wingsuit?
Yeah, I don't want to kind of buzzkill it, but I'll just tell you my own take
Well,
on how
buzzkill it.
it
I
for
just
me.
tell me the truth. If it was
Yeah,
nothing big, then say, hey, if it was.
yeah, for sure. No, it was a French guy, Patrick D. Gaillardon. He also used to be known as the Silver Surfer, one of the first ever guys to put a board on his feet. So he started sewing fabric between his legs and under his arm pits, and creating a little bit of a bat wing type look. But very just.
So was he Bruce Wayne back in the day then?
He probably thought he was. So those suits started getting built, and then a couple parachute companies started putting a little bit more technology into the wingsuit development and using the right fabric and actually creating power in them. And so started to play with them back then when would that have been, like super late 90s maybe, or early 2000s. And then but for me personally, I was very into the freedom of human flight and the free fly, three-dimensional type flying, and wingsuiting out of an airplane to me was, to be honest, very boring. It was kind of slow. It was limiting. You felt like you were just like trapped in an air mattress, and there wasn't a lot. If you're just jumping out in its big blue open sky, it kind of gets a little boring because, I mean, after you have so many jumps, it's not boring.
Yeah, you're only flying to Earth at 300 miles an hour. Yeah, exactly. It's very boring.
Yeah, so super boring. And so, no.
But you're not. You like to fly in between shit and do stuff, right?
Well,
Hug the
that came
sides of
later.
mountains and shit, right?
Well, that's when I started loving the sport of wingsuiting. So when I first started doing it, it was strictly skydiving. And after a couple hundred jumps of doing that, took it off, put it in the closet because I wanted just the freedom of human flight. But then I started getting more into the base jumping world and jumping off the mountains. And then you start getting the more sensation of flight because all the visual things come at you, the ground, the trees, the mountain slopes. And you really, really, really feel like you're flying then, compared to if you jump out of an airplane at 13,000 feet, you're just in the big blue bubble. It's like, oh, you're just floating up here.
So the lack of physical references changes the experience a lot.
100%. And that's why everybody anymore is rushing, unfortunately, because it's fatal too many times. But they're rushing in to go be a wingsuit base jumper because it's the most dangerously addictive thing I've ever experienced in my life. It's just you have that feeling of zooming by mountains and through trees and then you go try to do something else, even if it's like big mountain skiing or something, and just nothing compares to it. There's just nothing.
It's interesting. I've heard fighter pilots say similar things. Um, that once you have this kind of experience, it's hard to go, fly for American Airlines.
Exactly. Yeah, I
So
mean that's it.
is it like, does it fuck up your life? I mean, you have this thing that gives you this giant adrenaline dump. I assume that's
Yeah,
what it gives you,
yeah, I
and
mean,
and there's nothing else like it.
yeah. There's not. That's why you do anything you can to turn your passion into a profession because nothing else really touches on what you felt every time you jump. And yeah, it kind of, I wouldn't say it messes up people's lives, but it'll make you quit your law job, sell all your stuff, move into a tent at a drop zone, and dump hundreds of thousands of dollars on skydiving and traveling and base jumping. And it's kind of I'd almost say it saves a lot of people because everybody's stuck in the rat race of doing what you're supposed to do, make money, not really being happy, and looking for those few weeks a year that you're going out and enjoying yourself. Well, it's such an addictive, positive feeling that it makes people figure out how to turn that into their lives.
It reminds me, not of the experience because I can't really relate to it, but in terms of that ethos, a lot like surfing or skiing. I live
100%.
in Santa Cruz, California, and one of the stickers you see around town a lot is "Surfing ruined my life."
Yeah. And slash saved it.
Yeah, because once the needle goes in the vein, it's in, and that's it, right? You just got to be in the water. So it sounds a lot like that.
Oh, it is. Through the world of Red Bull, I'm privy to hang out with a lot of the top surfers, skiers, you name it. And I think a lot of the high adrenaline sports, the athletes would answer the same thing I'm answering, that, not everybody has the passion for the same thing, but you find one of those sports that you're passionate about and you'll change your life for it.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? So, when did you decide? Hey, I can make a living doing this. Like, when did that get clear to you, or did it ever?
Yeah, I mean, I went right away. I chased a girlfriend out of Alaska to a tiny little community college in Texas, but I didn't really go to school. I just went and learned to skydive at the local skydive center.
So there was a gal in Alaska that you liked, and you chased her.
Yeah, I don't know. I knew I wanted to do something adventure tourism with my life, like I was saying earlier. And I thought,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to go get at least an associate's in business, so I have a little bit of a business sense when I try to do this adventure tourism business.
Okay, so maybe I could like figure out like what revenue and expenses are or something like that.
Yeah, like how do you do a P&L sheet? I don't know, man,
Something, something
something.
that makes me sound like
Yeah,
I know something.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, as soon as what I saw was people being instructors and tandem masters, and even at the normal level of skydive professional like that, where you're just an instructor at a drop zone, it was enough for me being 18, seeing these guys, making 60 grand a year being skydive instructors. And I was like, wait a minute, you can be a skydive instructor your whole life? Because most of these guys, they weren't young people. I'm sitting and watching everywhere from 20-year-olds to 65, 70-year-olds doing this. And I saw, okay, this is going to be a whole life career if you want, because you can do it at any age really, as long as you stay fit.
And did
So
60 grand sound like a lot of money?
at 93, at 18 years old, yes, it
Yeah.
sounded like, hey, that sounds like a normal person's
Yeah.
salary. So what am I doing? Chasing this bullshit college career where
Yeah.
it's not my mentality already. So I dropped out of school. I went back to Alaska and focus. You can make a lot of money up there if you have the right connections with all the different industries from fishing and mining and tourism. So I went back with a goal of work my ass off for a year. And in 1 year, I made I don't know exactly, I had $52,800 by the time I quit working. And
Uh-huh.
then I moved down to Skydive, Arizona, in the middle of nowhere in
So you
Eloy,
went from
Arizona.
Alaska to Arizona.
Yeah, it was the biggest drop zone and still is arguably one of the biggest drop zone. But back then it was the Mecca. It was the biggest drop zone in the world where everyone from all around the world, all the Italian, German, Chinese, you name the teams. That's where they came to train. It's where all the world championships were.
So
It was,
Arizona is the Hollywood of skydiving, or
yeah. And now the
the
sport's grown quite a bit where there's a few pockets like that, really big drop zones you can go to. But back then, that was the one.
if you want to train, if you're just like if you're a country and western singer songwriter, you go to Nashville. So that was Nashville.
That was our Nashville, 100%.
And still is. Where do you live now?
Now I'm in Orange County, SoCal, Southern California. Yeah.
And where do you like to fly when you're home?
Well, my sponsoring drop zone is Skydive Paris, kind of inland Riverside area.
Yeah.
But I travel so much. I'm on the road nonstop and that's something I love so much is you can jump anywhere in the world. You know, I was just down in Rio, Brazil, jumping into Rock in Rio, the big music festival down there.
Yeah, you said that when we were swapping some emails. So tell me about what that was.
That was insane. I've never seen. I've jumped. You know, I got almost 22,000 jumps by now, and I travel the world jumping major events all over the place, and not just me, but everybody I was with, surrounded by, whether it was cultural music people, athletes on my team. I'd never seen that many people at one music event in my life. It was about 130,000 people a night, and the venue, just the sea of people, was insane. And to kind of skip into a subject that we're not talking about, Guns N' Roses crushed it.
Oh, we talk about anything you want, John.
They are back with a vengeance. Like, I don't know if they're off drugs, they trained, they something, because.
And you saw Slash and Duff, right? This is the closest thing to the original lineup we've had in, I don't know, maybe 2 decades, I think, right?
Yeah, Axl's voice was just, nobody else could touch him. Like, Bon Jovi sounded horrible, Chili Peppers were so, you name it, and Guns N' Roses came out, and like the Who opened for him, and they said it best. They're like, Guns N' Roses is better than they've ever been, and we followed them from day one. You know, don't trust us, here they come. And they came out, and I mean, there was.
Can you imagine what it must be like to be those guys? What happened in your life when the Who is opening for you?
Right.
Holy fuck! Right?
Yeah, and
like if I was one of those guys, I'd spend the whole show going, "The Who just opened for us, motherfuckers!" Right?
Hell yeah,
that's crazy.
Hell yeah, man! It was but justified because they came out and they were hands down the show.
And so, what happens when Slash starts the opening lick of "Sweet Child of Mine"?
Oh, it was the whole 130,000 people just erupt, and it was I mean, the crowd was. It didn't matter if you were front stage or honestly 1,000 yards back, because that's how big the venue was. It was shoulder to shoulder, and the Brazilians are passionate about music, man, because that whole sea was just. It was powerful. It was really cool, and another thing that was pretty cool was, and then we can change subjects off of music, but
we can go anywhere you want, John.
I'm hanging out with the X Games badass, multiple gold medal skateboard girl, Leticia. She's a young 24-year-old Brazilian, super cute. Just no.
So that part must be terrible, hanging out with the X Games 22-year-old Brazilian champion. That must have been a horrible experience there, John.
Yeah. Explaining it to my wife. But I looked down. I was like, "There's no way you even know Guns N' Roses." And she turns around, and on her calf is a full calf size picture of Axl's face. and I'm just like, all right, I don't know how, I don't know where that gap happened, but so just to let me know that like those guys are back. It was awesome.
I love that those sort of, I guess now we'd call them younger millennials, you know, the sort of, I don't know, 19, 20, 21, 25 in sort of that zone. A lot of them are into GNR and AC/DC and Led Zeppelin and the Ramones and, you know, a lot of the 70s and 80s rock and roll.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's just like anything. It's like fashion or you name it, it all comes back, man. If it was good then, it's going to be good again.
So paint a picture for me, John. What exactly does the Red Bull Air Force, is it the Red Bull Air Force at this event? Do you ever fly with anybody other than the Red Bull Air Force?
Yeah, you bet. I'll do one-off things for sure, but I'm the manager of the team and one of the lead athletes. We do 60 plus shows a year. So besides doing the Red Bull Air Force gigs, we're so busy. The only thing I really like let trump the Red Bull Air Force world would be if Hollywood calls for stunt jobs and movies and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just really just bluntly, there's really just not time to do much else, but I'll do the occasional.
Much else other than the Air Force.
Yeah. The Air Force and stunt jobs in the Hollywood world. And I'm busy.
And I gotta believe for Red Bull, is this a fair analogy? The Air Force is for Red Bull what the blimp is for Goodyear. Is that sort of what's happened over time? Like you
Yeah,
guys
yeah, I
show
like
up,
your analogy.
you guys are there. Red Bull. This is a Red Bull event that they give a big shit about because you show up at the Super Ding Dong events.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're really lucky that Red Bull's slogan is Red Bull gives you wings, because if it gave you anything else, we probably wouldn't be sponsored, because it's really hard to get sponsored in our sport. Everybody's scared of it and they can't attach to it. So
Well,
Red
because you
Bull,
guys die, right?
it's really rare. You know, it's if you our USPA magazine, the governing body of skydiving, puts out a magazine every year, and they do a fact check when it comes everywhere from big mountain skiing all the way down to rollerblading, kayaking, and even riding your bike on the street. They'll do a breakdown, even a per capita who does it. And we are the safest extreme sport that anyone does. But for some reason, when a fatality happens, the media glorifies it, focuses in. Like, when's the last time you saw CNN talk about a kayaker drowning? You don't,
Probably never.
never. But the day a skydiver crashes at a drop zone and dies, it's
It's big
headline.
news.
For
Yeah.
some reason, they sensationalize it, and it's unfortunate because it's not dangerous. It's as dangerous as you make it, of course. But the sport of skydiving is really safe. It's
So if I were to compare the safety to, by way of example, zip lining, are there comparisons that have been made with data?
I'm sure I don't know about exact zip lining, but yeah, the articles that the USPA puts out, they'll pick like 10 sports: skateboarding, skiing, da da da, and every year it's a little different. But
Yeah.
we're always at the bottom of the list when it comes to
So
fatalities.
skiing is more dangerous from a fatalities perspective than
Oh, sure. There's
than
more people
skydiving.
dying in ski crashes and avalanches than skydiving every year, hands
Yeah.
down.
I mean, that would make sense because I would think more people do it, right?
Yeah, but the articles even correlate, like they'll take that into account, where there's like,
I
okay,
see.
there's 100,000 skydivers, there's 1.8 million skiers, but it
Yeah.
just doesn't matter. There's no way we can convince people, because you're
Because you're
hurling your
jumping out of a perfectly good plane for
yeah.
apparently quote unquote no reason.
Well, there's no such thing as a perfectly good plane. They usually crash on landing, so it's better to get out before they land.
So, hey, take me back for a second to Brazil. So, there's this giant festival with GNR with the Who opening, and you guys are you flying into the show? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, so we do on that one, at least we do a live air to ground. So all of our cameras are live to all the jumbotrons all around the arena. So
And are
everybody,
you the opening of GNR, or what part of the show are you?
on that one, who did we open? We had to jump at a certain time slot. I think we opened the Who on that one, because it was almost dark, because GNR didn't come on till night. But so yeah, it always varies.
And so
Who.
you have live GoPros or whatever. You have a camera on your head that is streaming live video. Yes.
Yeah, and so we'll choreograph shows that we had 4 different people. We had one guy doing the paragliding, where he's doing real big parachute acrobatics. And then another one of our guys jumped out with a big Rock in Rio flag we had made. And
That's
then
great.
and then a couple of us jumped out in wingsuits and did flybys of the flag and those kind of things.
And of course, the whole time the audience is seeing, they can look up and see you as you're coming down towards them.
Hold on a second. My computer's about to die. Let me plug it in.
Oh, that would be good. It'd be a
Hold on.
bummer to lose you now. We're getting warmed up.
Oh yeah, we're back.
Okay.
I looked up, saw 1% on my bar. Oh no.
Oh, this is going to suck. And so you guys are flying around. You have a routine that you're doing essentially in the air. You're putting on a performance. You're not just flying down, right?
Yeah, no, we choreograph a whole performance, thinking about where the crowd is, what they can see, all those kind of things. So we put on a little, basically mini. It takes us about 4 minutes to get out all the way down to landing.
Yeah.
So we put on a little mini 4-minute air show that pumps the crowd up and
Gets them ready for
gets them
Pete
ready.
Townsend. And
Yeah.
where do you land at an event like that?
It's always like backstage on an access road, or
So you fly over top of the stage and then land behind it somewhere?
yeah, on that one. A lot of times we'll jump in, and with enough planning, sometimes they'll make like a little runway in between the crowds, and we come in and scare the shit out of everybody.
You can stick a much tighter landing than I would have thought as a layman, can't you? I mean,
yeah, we can land on wherever we want to land. And we come in, our parachutes get going 60, 70 miles an hour. So like 800 feet, we'll go into a straight dive and just dive towards Earth. And then we plane out and swoop just like a plane lands on a runway or a bird lands on water or something.
Yeah.
But we can come in, when we come in level to the ground, we're going 60 plus miles an hour. And for an example, that for a visualization of it, we could drag our foot on a body of water for about 400 or 500 feet before we stop. So that's how much speed and power we're coming in with.
Wow.
And you can also jump different parachutes that come in and land on an X, like most people think military style look and float down. But there's also Lamborghini parachutes that are super fast. And to be honest, most fatalities that happen in skydiving are under those parachutes. A perfectly good parachute, everything's fine, and a pilot flies it into the ground.
Just misjudges where the actual dirt is.
Yeah, it's like a rock on the end of a string, the pendulum effect.
Yep.
So when you do those big diving hook turns, when you're up above your parachute and you're diving down,
yep,
you have no control until the energy gets under the parachute. So if you do that turn too low, it's basically like you just whacked yourself into the ground.
This may be a crazy question, but how do you know where the ground is? Because, if I think about high divers, they put those bubbles at the bottom of the pool to break up the glassy water so they can judge the bottom. Are there situations where you have essentially a glassy pool that makes it hard to actually know where the bottom or where the land or the water is? So how do you know that?
Yeah, I mean, every location you land is going to be different. In general, you look for visual references and things that just, the muscle memory. You don't land like that right away. Remember how many jumps I have.
This is not how you would start me, John.
No, you would be on the big Greyhound bus just floating down and landing. But yeah, it's just time and muscle memory and learning what to identify. We also have little things in our ears that beep at certain altitudes, so you know where you're at as well.
So when you hit 500 feet or 1,000 feet or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, you set it to whatever you like and what you're trying to accomplish. But yeah, there's a lot of references.
Because I noticed I was watching the Red Bull documentary on you guys flying into Manhattan, which, by the way, was so fucking cool. Thank you for doing that.
Awesome.
How long ago was that? Remind me, John.
That was opening day of the Freedom Tower.
Oh, so no way.
Yeah, we were supposed to be wearing smoke on our feet. The funny side story on that one. We were supposed to have big smoke cans on our feet, just like a Blue Angels or, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting there, realize I'm talking to a couple of my buddies that are part of the military world and SWAT and all that. And we start realizing that, okay, the Freedom Tower's opening. It's opening day. Nobody knows this is going on in the city at all because we had to kind of keep it under the wraps a little bit. We had the right permissions, but nobody knows it's happening. And then right before we were about to jump, we realized, wait a minute, if we jump out 2 miles offshore and we're flying towards the Freedom Tower, we're going to look like missiles. Nobody's going to know anything. Like we're going to be 4 bodies.
And you're smoking 4 smoking missiles coming at the Freedom Tower.
Yeah, from the ground, that's exactly what we look like. We're going 130 miles an hour, trailing big trails of smoke. So at the last minute, we decided to stay clean, leave the smoke off, and just be us. Because we were like, man, what if, like, I'm just going crazy, but like, what if snipers are up there, like, starting to try to shoot us down or something?
Somebody shoots our asses down. Yeah.
Yeah, no thanks. So that was
Air Force shot out of sky. Yeah.
Right.
But it was an amazing feat. You guys were talking about on the documentary how nobody had ever gotten clearance because you had to deal with multiple agencies to get clearance to do that, right?
Yeah, it was a nightmare. Only the power of Red Bull, really. I mean, I'm sure others could do it, but pull it off. It was a really long process to get permission, because one of my good buddies, Jeb Corliss, years ago, tried to base jump off the Empire State Building, and he got caught. And after that happened, the city, Manhattan proper, they passed an actual law that says no parachuting can happen in the 5-mile bubble of Manhattan. And so we couldn't land on land. So we came up with the idea that we realized the Hudson River was not part of that law. So we brought out a barge, but you can't tether or you can't anchor anything in the Hudson River. So we had to have a tug pulling the barge at exactly the same speed as the current, like about 4 knots. so it was stationary, but from the air it looked like it was moving because it was being tugged at 4 knots. So a little trickery to pull it off. But yeah, luckily we had a production company that was super tied in with the mayor's office, and they're the ones that really helped push through this one-time amazing thing.
Incredible. Um, and what are some of the other, I mean, I know there's so many, but off the top of your head, what are some of the other jumps where you just go, wow, I can't believe we got to do that?
And so many, we're so blessed. To back up a little bit, probably one of the coolest things, definitely top three. I was lucky to be on the team that did all the stunts for Transformers 3, where we flew through the city of Chicago in wingsuits. And we were the first people in history to jump off.
And you're flying in between the buildings, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, that whole scene is 100% authentic up until about halfway through, where you start seeing guys go through holes in buildings and actually fly up, and you can tell where it gets fake.
Yeah.
But a good half of it,
even a layman like me could tell this is where the CGI kicks in.
Exactly. But there was a lot of it that there might have been CGI of like buildings exploding, but the flight was still real. But yeah, so that we were the first people in history to jump off the Sears Tower or Willis Tower, whatever you want to call it now. So that was really special because that's,
yeah.
And then the Trump building down in Chicago, we were first people to jump off that and fly in slalom through all the buildings, like around the Aon building and the Blue Cross. It was just, we were closing down 6 square city blocks, had 70 cops on staff. We were shutting down Chicago to do this stuff. And it was like, you just couldn't believe what was happening. So that was definitely a huge one. And
what year did you do the shooting for Transformers 3?
That would have been 12 or 13.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, because I did. Yeah, I think 2013 was Transformers.
So how many movies have you done? Do you know, John?
I don't know the actual number, but quite a lot. Basically, I mean, really lucky, not patting myself on the back, but over the last 10, 12 years, if you go through any movie, with aerial stunts in it, I probably had my fingers in it somehow, if not a lot.
And you coordinate the stunts too, right? I mean, you're not just an athlete; you are part of putting the stunt together and managing the whole shot and so forth, right?
Yeah, that was something that was really hard for me to convince because it was really against the world of Hollywood, where you always have a stunt coordinator and then you have the stunt guys. And our world is such a specialty stunt that it just, on a few movies I went on, you could tell it wasn't working, where the guy that wasn't a jumper at all was sitting there, choreographing it and coordinating the whole thing. So eventually I started convincing the directors and stuff that started hiring me, like, let me wear 2 hats. Let me be the stunt coordinator for it. But to be in the stunt is the most valuable thing in the world, because I know exactly what's happening. So when I land, I don't have to sit there and talk to my stunt guys going, oh, you felt turbulence on that wall, and so now you're scared, or you can't do this, why? Where I was the one experiencing it. So when I landed, there was no back and forth. It was, what's happening. So you can really take a sequence to the highest level because you're the one actually doing it, not just trying to digest it.
And I would imagine you tell me, do you have a better sense of, and look, I'm ignorant of these things, but what the right camera angles might be, or where to, how to perform the stunt so that you get the shot in a particular way,
Sure.
In a way that if I was a movie director, I might not see that because I don't know how to fly.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I started getting the nods that, like, okay, go ahead and wear these 2 hats, because we don't know what's possible. And what's really special in our world is because it's such a specialty type thing that, compared to flipping cars or a bar fight or something like that, they truly don't know. They don't know what's possible. So, even from the Michael Bays down to the calmer directors, it's they just kind of step back and say, this is your world. We trust you. Like, here's what we'd like to see, but we don't know what's possible. So go show us what's possible.
And how often are you out doing something that's not movie related? You're doing something like Rio, or maybe you're shooting a movie in some incredible locale in the mountains or wherever you are, and you see something, or you guys do something, or maybe you choreograph a new set of moves or whatever, and you go, That's going to be awesome in a movie one fucking day. Does that
Oh, for
happen a
sure.
lot? Yeah.
100%. Yeah. To the point where, I got a big notebook full of ideas and things that I've experienced, like what you're saying, where some director will call and be like, hey, we're trying to fit this, we're trying to build a sequence into this movie or commercial or whatever it is. What kind of ideas do you have? And so
And
that's where it's like, hey, here's some ideas that have never been done before. So
and are you a little bit like a songwriter in that way, where you've got like stunt ideas jotted down all over the place, and you're kind
oh, for
of
sure.
you got choruses and verses floating around in your head?
100%. Yeah. I have a lot of ideas. I got many movies in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm curious with Hollywood, like when they shoot down, you said, was it 8 city blocks? Is that right? Do you remember that?
Yeah. I think it was 6 was what I was told.
Six blocks. Okay. So I'm making this giant. I mean, what would the budget of Transformers 3 be? Do you know?
The overall budget,
Yeah. I mean, you got to believe it'd be a couple hundred million
it was
more, maybe.
over 700 million.
Well, holy shit.
Yeah. Michael Bay
Wow.
movies are nothing to be messed with, but it grossed
That's a
like
$1 billion
8.1.
movie.
Yeah. I mean, within the first month, it like grossed 1.8 billion. And by now I don't know what the number is, but it was easy to
Wow.
make money. Yeah. He's one of the highest, like,
Well, I knew he made a lot of money, but I didn't realize we were coming up on the $1 billion movie. But I guess my question is, at some level, they're worried about cost, even with that kind of a budget. And so, I don't know. You tell me, CGI is pretty good today. When I see a dinosaur or a monster or something like that, they look pretty real.
mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing you could pull off the entire flying sequence in a movie like that today with computer technology.
It's still fake. You still see it. And
Is that
directors,
why they hire you guys ultimately? Because people still know?
yeah, you still know. And there's kind of a cool movement going on in the last few years where directors and second unit directors, they seem to be wanting to do it real again, where I think the funny part is CGI 9 times out of 10, it costs more to create a scene than to shoot it for real. So
No kidding.
a lot of times the pressure we get is like, hey, say something simple, like we're trying to do a scene and then there's only supposed to be 2 guys, but the third guy, you kind of saw him in the corner. And so even to go in and post and paint that guy out and do that kind of work where he didn't really exist, the director is, it's better to go up and reshoot it again than to send it into post to paint out. But
So if that third guy in this example wasn't in the original shot, they thought they were going to paint him in, it's actually cheaper to redo that shot with that third guy and have that third guy fly in than to have the technology do it.
a fake person. Yeah, 9 times out of 10. That plus the CG world is definitely getting really good, but like any movie you see, you can tell the difference between a real stunt and not still to this point. So it's like, I think the younger generation kind of through all the Iron Mans and all the Marvel type movies, they expect heavy CGI already. So you can get away with doing it quite a bit because they're not expecting it to be real. They just want to be blown away with, all the crazy graphics, but there's still a big difference.
And so you don't think we're near a day where directors like Bay say, we don't need to hire John and the team. We can just CGI our way through this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I hope not. It's technology will probably get there eventually where you can't tell the difference. But a handful of years ago, that was a heavy conversation in the stunt community. Was we're going to get replaced with computers. But then you just felt it hit this point where it's like, actually, no, technology is not quite there. Like,
well, and the other thing I love about what you're saying too is like you bring a level of creativity, a level of obviously knowledge and experience, and so. Like you say, when you could tell Michael Bay, hey, you know what? If we do it this way, it's going to be a lot cooler, and he's not going to know that, right?
yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
I could be the greatest CGI wizard in the world, but I'm probably not a wingsuit master.
Yeah, so you might develop things that, just like in the Transformers, the second half of our sequence, when it went CGI, they started doing things that like even non-skydivers look at and go, okay, I know that's not possible. So then they start to debunk the whole scene, like, was the whole thing fake? And
Yeah.
luckily, most of the action directors out there, they seem to have come from a heavy stunt background, most of them. If they weren't stunt men, they've been doing action movies forever, so they take pride in it. And, it seems like most directors want to have the conversations going around of like, no, that was real. That was done for real. Like the Point Break movie we just did a few years ago.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean, as a surfer, it's a ridiculous movie, and I love the first one, which is also a ridiculous movie, but it's a lot of fun with. I like to call them.
called classic. Yeah, man.
Yeah, and as a Canadian, I get to say this. I like to call him Canoe Reeves.
Yeah. Nice.
Canoe might be the worst actor in history, don't you think, John? Like, you can see him reading the cue cards, like, "Hey, Jimmy, do not go in there." Like,
Right. It's awesome. Yeah,
but
yeah.
that first
just
Point
watched
Break
one
was great. But the stunts that you guys did and the camera angles and the technology in the new one are just like, it's a ridiculous movie, I thought, but it is absolutely worth watching as a surfer, for the surf shots and the stunts. And how do you do that? How do you make that so awesome for us?
Yeah, I mean, I give all the credit to the director Erickson Core on that one. He his kind of background is DP, director of photography, where I think, I don't want to speak for him, but I think he really got his big jump where he was the director of photography for the first ever Fast and Furious. And that was a movie that changed the world, or the world of Hollywood, a lot, because it was just shot so different. And so his big vision, because he's an outdoors sports guy, was he just wanted every single stunt, whether it was climbing, surfing, skydiving, like you name it, everything has to be real in this movie. We're not going to fake any of the actual stunt. And he was really adamant about that. I mean, the number of meetings we had about keeping everything 100% real, like our wingsuit sequence, there was filters and lenses that I wish we wouldn't have used because it made it look like it was CG, but there's not 1 second in that wingsuit scene that's fake. There's not one. Even the part where it looks like we're in a green screen, and there's a few parts because of filters that it looks kind of surreally.
Yeah.
But I shot, like I was there, man. I did it. It was every second.
When I go back and watch Point Break, the new one, all the flying scenes, you guys are doing that flying.
Yeah, 100%. There's not one piece of fakery in that. And it wasn't part of the other sports stunt sequences, but I was told it was the same for all that. They brought in Sharma for all the climbing. All the climbing was legit. Laird and those guys for the surfing, and everything was done for real. The cinematography in that movie, I hope it didn't do so well in the box office because, just to be blunt, the dialogue was worse than the first movie. But so the story was, yeah,
it was like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but it wasn't trying to be funny, right?
Right, exactly. So it was but the cinematography, like I've still never seen anything like that to this day. It was absolutely beautiful.
It was breathtaking. Yeah, no question. And now I'm going to go back and watch it again and pay extra attention to the flying scenes.
Yeah, you'll see in the wingsuit scene, I'm the guy in the blue suit. I doubled Utah. And at the very end, right before we go
Of course you doubled Utah.
Why not? Like the scariest almost took my life moment of that movie, you'll see that there's 4 of us coming in, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 of us coming into a grass field. And I got about 3 inches off the ground where the grass is moving like crazy. And most people
3 inches off the ground at what speed, John?
Yeah, I had grass hitting my face. We were going like 120, 130.
Oh, fucking fuck.
Yeah, it was really.
How do you not have a bowel movement in that moment?
Everybody's heard of the saying of like, the flow state of mind and all that.
Yeah.
That moment on video, it really took about a nanosecond. But in my brain, that was a 1 minute long. I was thinking so slow and so removed from what was really going on that like there's no time for panic. Just everything's in like hyperspace mode. It's really hard to tell where, I thought I was a little higher than I was to kind of call myself out. But on the same note, mentally, I never thought I was in danger. I saw my line. I knew I had it. Although I did think I was like 2 feet higher. So maybe I didn't really have it. But,
Missed
but it all worked out.
Your sport is a sport of inches, isn't it, John?
Yeah. I had blades of grass hitting. There was like tall, like 18-inch like reed grass there in the fields. And I was having that hit my face. And that's when I knew how low I was.
And you mentioned that flow state. Is it safe to assume that every jump you go into that flow state?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most addicting parts of the sport, whether you're just jumping out of a plane, falling on your belly like a skydiver would, or doing something as extreme as the Point Break movie. It's, I call it, it's air therapy. It's normal skydive's a minute. So I always say it's a forced minute of meditation that you can't help but fall into this. You don't have to get into it. It's the second you step out or off or whatever your exit is, you're in that feeling, and that's what that euphoria feeling, and and that's what everybody keeps going back for.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, of course, I'm not an athlete at anywhere close to your level. So, you're, um, Steph Curry, and I'm a guy who plays basketball with a couple buddies every once in a while in the front of my house. So I'm not confused about who's where in this discussion. But that said, I relate to that experience. I mean, as a surfer, I think that is why we surf, because for that 18 seconds or what, it's a very short period of time, as you well know, there's nowhere to be other than completely in the moment, dancing with the wave. There's no grocery list. There's no anything, right? Actually, I'd be curious, for me in that physical flow state, there's not even really me, if you know what I mean.
Very much so. Yeah.
Is that how it is for you?
Yeah, it feels very, very removed, almost like you're looking at yourself. You're not yourself. You're more.
Some of the psychologists, they call it the third person consciousness, where it's as though you're outside yourself, watching yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
so that's how it is for you.
Yeah, anymore I have so many jumps that maybe not the typical. If I just go skydiving and I'm out at the drop zone jumping, you still get into that air therapy, as I call it, the minute of free fall that you're just in the moment, because you still have to be, but it doesn't get that intense like the third person feeling unless I'm taking myself to a very high level of my sport.
Yeah. And I guess that happens for all of us, right? As a surfer who's gotten to be a mediocre longboarder, when I go out on a small day, for me, I'm still going to feel great getting out of the water. But when you take the intensity level down, that level of flow, present, urgent presence is less. Is that how it is?
Yeah, 100%. It's exactly the same.
So it's just different depending on what you're doing. But
it's all relative to where you're at in this, whatever sport you're given, or you name it. And I think it's the same. Like what what's funny to me is when I did a talk for the Go Abundance guys, Tim and everybody, I went to Tahoe and I did a little like web thing with them, and there was 12 dudes I'm talking to them, and they invited me out to Tahoe. And so I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to go talk to 12 or 20 dudes. Right. And luckily I prepared a great PowerPoint and the whole thing. So I show up at this event, super casual. I was hot tubbing out in the hot tub like 20 minutes before the talk. I had no idea. And then I walk into the auditorium, and there's like 400 people sitting there.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit. I had no idea. I was in flip flops and shorts, and so I ran to my room, got dressed nice, came back, and being up on stage was one of my first big talks. And,
it was.
And it was for that size. Yeah. I'd done a lot of, groups for sure, but I was expecting another 30-person group that I was going to talk to and try to inspire. And I slipped into almost the same level of wingsuiting off a cliff type of flow state of mind, super, present in the moment, because it was just such a rush and overwhelming what was going on. So I think what we're explaining can happen in anybody's world with anybody's story.
Yeah.
But
is somebody trying to do something to you there on the side?
Yeah, my daughters just woke up. They're going to school.
Do you want to say good morning, or do you need to do something?
No, they already left. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're in SoCal now, I assume.
Yeah, I just got back.
Yeah, from Brazil.
I was in since Brazil, we've done Austin City Limits, and then I just got back from Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where the Red Bull Air Race was happening.
Okay, so tell me about those two. You could tell me about these fucking stunts you do all day long here, John. So what were you doing in Austin, at Austin City Limits? Did you land on Willie Nelson?
We opened the Chili Peppers, but we stayed on Willie Nelson's ranch.
Did you really?
And his son, Lucas Nelson, did a private concert for us, 50 of us. And that motherfucker slayed it, man. I downloaded all of his stuff. And unfortunately, his music that you download is very more country and folk, but live, that dude slayed it. He is bringing rock back, his guitar skills, and he's doing everything finger picking his guitar and hip sway and looking at the girls to playing with his mouth and stuff, and just
is he Jimi Hendrix and Willie Nelson in one dude?
Yes, dude. He was amazing. And then
what's his first name again?
Lucas, Lukas. Yeah.
With a K, yeah. And how old would he be now? Do you know?
28.
Wow, that's very cool. And I got to ask you, if this is inappropriate to ask a professional athlete such as yourself, then just kick me under the table. Did you get to smoke pot with Willie?
No, Willie didn't show up,
Ah,
but it was pretty cool. Like he has his dispensary with like Willie weed and all that. Like it was exactly what you expect. His ranch is pretty damn cool. So Red Bull got all their athletes out for the 2017 Athlete Summit. So every sponsored athlete for Red Bull was invited to come spend a long weekend on Willie's ranch and hang out. And the kind of the finale of the whole thing was everybody got brought with VIP passes to Austin City Limits for the Chili Peppers. But us being a little bit different than others, I was like, hey, if we're going to go do that, we should fucking jump into the thing. Like, we don't usually just like go to events and stand there. So that was very last minute, but we got it pulled off. So we just did a normal, almost just like the Rio one, live air to ground, big. We had a big Texas flag to pump up all the Texans and, you know, typical skydive show on that one.
I love it. Now I got it. You mentioned Timmy, and of course he's one of my best friends. I love him with my whole heart, and I love everything he's been doing with One Life and Go Abundance. And I know, I did some homework on you guys, and I've been watching you for a long time. I'm man enough to admit you're one of my heroes, and yeah, no, really, and how I first got to know about you was through being in Tahoe and loving those guys in Tahoe and falling in love with Shane McConkey and J.P. Holmes. And, as somebody who lived in Tahoe for a while and for the, I've been in California for 21 years now and fell in love with Tahoe as soon as I got here and have skied there, more days than I can ever count. Of course, you can imagine how important a guy like Shane was in Tahoe and a guy like JT,
Sure.
or still is. So I guess that all leads to a couple things, which is the first one is, did you know that you were what I would describe as category designing a whole new sport in the early days of this stuff?
I did, yeah,
You
because
did. You said one day this is going to be a big fucking sport and I'm going to be Muhammad Ali in this sport.
yeah, I was lucky enough to identify. I think growing up in a ski industry or ski town in Alaska, like I referenced earlier, the snowboarding when I was young, I'm old enough to know when snowboarding came into the world. And I remember watching that whole change of a sport happen. And when I found skydiving, the same thing was happening. So, and I was part of that movement. I focused my life on it, turned into one of the best really right away because it didn't exist yet. So it was easy to be the best. um, and so I realized right away that I was going to be an influencer and a game changer in the sport. And so whether it's inventing the vertical free fly stuff or pushing the limits of wingsuiting or now the speed riding stuff where we do big mountain skiing with the parachutes, I've been in the group that's been at the forefront of leading the development of all those sports. So at a young age, I realized that I was going to be, if I wanted to stay in it, I'd be one of those guys in the world of air sports.
That you were going to do that. And I would argue you are a category designer in that you have designed a new category of sport.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely if not a category, at least a stepchild of it. It's a
stepchild of a category.
Yeah.
So I got to go back in time. My first memory of what today I think you would reference as your sport. You tell me if this is not the right way to think about it. But in my life, the first time I knew that you could do this stuff, that was not just sort of parachuting as we understood it for a long time, was, and I want to say, you tell me, I want to say it was 79, maybe it was 77, James Bond, The Spy Who Loved Me. The beginning of the movie, Roger Moore is doing the cuddle with this gorgeous supermodel on the top of a mountain somewhere in the Alps. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, chasing the plane off the cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I ever saw a skier fly off a cliff and engage a parachute. And of course, years later, Shane McConkey recreated the scene in a comical way.
Right.
So I guess my question is that when the fact that you could actually pull this crazy shit off entered the sort of public awareness, or where do you trace the beginning of sort of the fact that you could do this becoming an idea for people?
I mean, everybody in the sport probably has a different answer to that. Mine would simply be that not back then, because nothing really happened in between then and then a long couple decades went by where there wasn't really much innovation in the sport.
So that didn't spark a lot of innovation. That stunt happened,
That
and
was just a stunt. That was like, oh my God, who did that? That guy almost died. How do you do it? But it didn't change anything really.
wow. So there was no follow on to that. It wasn't like Roger Bannister breaking the 4 minute mile, and everybody said, "Let's make movies where we jump off cliffs and engage parachutes."
Right. Yeah. No, it didn't. It didn't really kick. The biggest thing that, and I think most people, if they really go through the history of looking at the numbers of how many people were skydiving at time A compared to time B and what was in the middle, it was, as corny as it sounds, the original Point Break in '91. When it came out, it put skydiving on the map, because it was obviously a big movie back then, big stars, and really, nothing so stunty was going on, but it made everyone want to jump. And if you could talk to any drop zone owner back in the early '90s, their numbers went 1,000% up when it came to people coming to do tandems, doing the courses to learn. Like, it really propelled our sport forward. That movie did. It was the big, everybody wants to do it now.
Hmm. And so your sport is inextricably linked then to Hollywood.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. It's I mean, it all came from the military, and then it went sport for a while, and then once the sport kind of, I think once the level of expertise in the sport picked up a little bit, that's where Hollywood started taking notice, and then it all kind of, it's like a pie. It took every piece of the pie to make it what it is today. So I can't just point to one thing, but it was the world of movies, and so the WWW world, when everybody could start signing on and all that good stuff, is really where everything started taking off.
Yeah, and so the internet has a lot to do with it, right? Because I mean, Red Bull has its own TV channel, of course. I don't have to tell you, and then your videos get seen, 47 million times the minute they come out, kind of thing, right? The virality of
Yeah.
interest in what you do is ridiculous.
Yeah. And that is one reason why sponsors attach to it a lot, because for whatever the reason is, compared to most sports, grandmas down to kids, when they see somebody jump off a cliff, they're going to stop for a minute and look, just because it's so strange, like, so not what most people would do, that I think it's way more captivating than, a skateboarder doing a trick, which has a way bigger following. So really on numbers, the skateboarding is going to win over us. But when it comes to captivating an audience, air sports is just a dream. It's a dreamlike state. So everybody's looked out of a window of an airplane or up to the sky and dreamt of, like, what does it feel like? What does flying feel like? And
Yeah.
so I think that not everybody's looked at a skateboard and said, what is it like to do a kick flip?
No.
But
No, and of course, theoretically, most of us could learn to do a kickflip. Although the skateboarders I know are going to kick me in the nuts for that saying that, but most of us are not going to do what you do.
right, yeah, we're a tiny 1% of 1% out there. We have a very small sport. It's so small that you could tell me that a skydiver in Australia, and I probably know him.
Yeah,
If they're,
exactly.
it's special like that.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you for at least one Shane story
One Shane story.
or
One
one thing
Shane
about
story.
Shane.
Man, there's so many. That's the curveball question right there, because there's so many. Shane was just so unique. It's hard to put him and his character into a story, but really just the way that he changed and combined sports really, really opened people's eyes. He knocked down a lot of brick walls for us when he started combining skiing with the ski basing, because he had so much respect in the ski industry and other sponsors that it made people take a look at us and really realize what we're doing was serious and there was validity to it. And when it comes to Shane's stories, it's I don't know what I should get into there.
Was he always doing that hilarious, funning on people stuff? I mean, he's sort of
yeah, man, he was a jokester
is he the Andy
nonstop.
Kaufman of extreme sports?
Yeah. I mean, it was a rare day that I saw him act serious. It was he was just a little kid in a man's body that, he was not going to stop pursuing the passions. And you only run across people like that with that kind of level of energy, maybe a couple times in your lifetime. And he was one of those guys.
And am I remembering this right? Right? Was he the first North American athlete sponsored by Red Bull?
I believe he was. I think maybe at the exact same time, pro skier Chris Davenport was also. But I
Okay,
believe Shane was
right there.
Yeah, I think Shane was number one, but I think it was the same year that they brought on those guys.
And so when that horrible accident happens and we lose Shane, what happens for you, John?
Well, you get a horrible phone call.
Yeah.
Not to go through the real nuts and bolts of it.
No, but really, I'm curious what that's like.
Well, for me personally, it was, and everybody in our circle was a massive shock because we were kind of untouchable at that point. We had done over a decade of gnarly shit. And even though stuff was happening to outside people, our little bubble of friends and teammates, we were at the top and untouchable. We, like, no matter what we did, nothing was going wrong, not even a broken ankle or anything, And that was the first really big thing that, made us feel like we were mortal, and really made everybody take 2 steps back and kind of recalculate things, and not just, throw caution to the wind. And like, in that time when that happened, a really good friend of mine, the first guy that ever flew a wingsuit down a mountain, his name was Jean-Louis Albert, a French guy. So I was talking to him on the phone because when Shane died, another guy, we had 3 things happen in 1 year. After a decade of nothing happening, we had 3
Yeah, I remember.
fatal accidents.
What year was that?
That was 97. I believe 97. No. I mean, sorry, 2007. 2007, I believe.
Shane died. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it just made everywhere from how we approach stunts and what we thought we could pull off to how sponsors were treating us. It really was a big hiccup in our world. And it was just a reality check of like what I was going to say, the guy Jean-Louis was telling me, he's like, the best thing you can try to accomplish is when you are in that flow state of mind, he used different words, but and you're in that third person type of feeling.
Yep.
He just told me, he's like, you need to learn to control your animal. And I was just like, what are you talking about at that? And he's like, that animal where you're so pumped up and you're in your moment and you're like, yeah, send it. And you're just in your moment, where control that animal and maybe let that other little devil or angel on your shoulder say like, hey, you got a wife and kids at home. Or, hey, you don't need to be 2 feet next to the wall. You could be 4. Nobody's going to know, and kind of fighting that internal ego you have of people like us with the thirst for the rush. You can't help it. Even if you're alone, even if I'm in the mountains alone and I'm doing my own thing, I can't help it. Like, oh, closer, faster, close. Like it's just awesome. And after Shane, you start because he guaranteed he had the same thing going on. And it just it helped me realize my inner animal a little bit more and be more conscious of it.
Well, I want to thank you and him and JT and all you guys, because you're our Tom Brady, not that I don't love football and stuff, but I relate to action sports, adventure sports, extreme sports in a way that I don't to football or basketball or even baseball, which I played. I think in the adventure, action sports, extreme sports world, we don't have very many heroes the way, the sort of normal sports heroes are celebrated, and there's lots of them, and there has been for generations, right?
Right.
You're a pioneer and a hero, and obviously Shane and JT were, and being in Tahoe and so forth. And so when Shane died, I'm a guy who skis with a sticker on my helmet that says "Thanks, Shane" on it.
Nice.
Yeah. And so how do you think about that today, both in the context of, hey, you're really not that old of a dude and life-wise.
Tell my sponsors that.
Yeah, way young, John, way young. Got decades.
Hell yeah.
You're getting stronger every year. And yet you are absolutely the guy. I mean, you're the captain of the Air Force. You're the guy. And you, with a few others, of course, have created a whole new category. And so as you think back, do you ever reflect on that, John?
Yeah, all the time, man. It's even at a young age, I had a goal of realizing that our sport, and not just skydiving, but any kind of extreme not the normal top 5, every kid can do it sport. I realized that the only way to grow any sport is through education. And if you can teach people, even if they don't ever get jump in their life, but teach them, we're not just Yahoo adrenaline junkies that are just on a death wish. We're doing an artistic, beautiful, super disciplined sport. And the more people are educated that it is a sport and not a stunt, the more the sport's going to grow and have validity to it. And my goal is that when I do retire one day, because I just can't keep doing it, that I've paved a path for other athletes to be the Tom Brady, to be kids' heroes, and not just be that Silver Surfer guy that nobody knows who he is and he was on a movie once and oh my God, that's crazy. But more, to be a name that people, almost like a Shane McConkey, where you say that name, almost everybody in the world that's ever played in the mountains knows that name. Where I hope that in the world of air sports and skydiving and base jumping, through our endeavors, the next generation might have that blessing of being more recognized and be able to be even more of a professional.
I mean, if they don't know your name, I don't know whose fucking name they know. Are you the first captain of the Air Force?
Yeah. I mean, it's the story of it in the cliff note was when it all started, there was a couple of us brought on to do some demos. World champion paraglider Othar Lawrence was the first one to take the reins to manage the team and wrangle the monkeys and turn it into something that could be choreographed. And
the flying monkeys, no doubt.
But yeah, I was always the one that recruited the athletes because I was the skydiver and that was what we were doing, not really paragliding. So after a few years of him kind of wrangling us, I took over the reins of really running it as a professional skydive base jump team. So, Othar Lawrence was definitely the first guy that ran the team, but to take it to the level we're at now, I'm definitely the only one. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got to ask you about the business side and how you think about that. Do you think about yourself as an entrepreneur or as a business person, or how do you think about that side of it that's not athlete and that's not, the head of the Air Force?
Yeah, I'm very much an entrepreneur from day one, everywhere from when I was 10. I've worked since I was 10, whether I was pulling weeds from neighbors or shoveling driveways when it was winter, all the way up to today. And that's what led me to this path is at a young age, to back up my one semester in college, my counselor told me to drop out of school and everybody's always taken back by that. But I told her what I wanted to do with my life. And she said, you need to get out of school. You need to go and pursue these disciplines you're trying to offer to people, open your dream business. And that's always been my mindset. And I think that's what separates me a lot from other professional skydivers out there is they're trying to be athletes and get paid by doing the sport, where I'm always trying to develop businesses around it, whether I'm opening production companies or, developing this stuff for stunts or.
I mean, you are a giant go-to guy in Hollywood today. Are you not?
Yeah. When it comes to aerial sports, I'm lucky enough that I seem to get the phone calls. So it's
but you're the guy that gets the phone calls. Like if you say, hey, we need guys to jump out of shit and do wild shit, there's one guy they call.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's a few guys out there to call, but I'm the guy that gets the call. So.
Yeah, exactly. You could call those other guys, but you call my ass.
Depends on what product you want at the end.
And so I love that you consider yourself an entrepreneur. And now I got to think about it from a Red Bull point of view. It's pretty innovative that these folks have made themselves a media company and attached themselves to this kind of an extreme sport. What kind of difference do you think it makes for Red Bull to produce all these amazing video documentaries and could do all these missions with you guys and then do all these events? I mean, do you have a sense you must have a good sense what it means to their business.
It's massive. It is the business. We joke around a lot and say that Red Bull's the largest marketing firm in the world that sells energy drinks. It's even though the energy drink is the lifeblood, the blue and silver can is the lifeblood of the company. But, the true passion is they give everything back to events, athletes, sponsorships, strange ideas that any other company in the world would just dismiss. They are trying to shake the norm, and they've been doing a great job at it. And they really empower their athletes. The coolest thing with Red Bull that most people don't believe, and we're not told to say this, is they never present anything to us. Not once have I been called like, hey, we got this idea. Can you pull it off? They're just an open door. We have athlete managers and marketing people that when you have an idea as an athlete, you reach out to them. And if they have any way to make a dream come true, they will. And a lot of times there's $0 to come back to Red Bull from anything that they support. They're, Dietrich, the owner of Red Bull in Austria, he's a air sports athlete, super passionate about sports, and gives everything back to it. And it shows. I mean, the core following, your monsters and your rock stars and stuff, they have a lot of big money, and they write big checks and take over things like motocross and this and that by just writing a big check. But they're not having the core following because of what they're doing. They're just paying the bills. So there's an obvious difference there. And, I just can't be more blessed to be with those guys, because they truly make dreams come true, especially for people like me.
Well, a hugely inspiring company. And the thing I love about it is it sounds like, you tell me, John, if this is the wrong way to think about it. They came along at exactly the right time for you and the other pioneers in maybe the flying sports categories and really extreme sports categories. I mean, They've enabled a lot of crazy stunts and backcountry, and it used to be there was Evel Knievel and that was it, right?
Right, 100%.
And now we got like you guys all over the place, right?
Yeah.
But you guys came along at the right time for them, because they attached themselves to emerging sports categories like yours, and then built their category and ultimately category king position by being associated with all these leading edge extreme sports.
Yeah, I mean, they changed the market. It's obvious to anybody that looks through the history of what Red Bull did, everywhere from how athletes are sponsored today, all the way down to the sports that you never would know existed. If it wasn't for them, they came on and just for everywhere from freestyle motocross to skydiving and everything in the middle, they supported things that people looked sideways at and said, how's there any value to that?
Yeah.
Well, they, in a unique way, showed how there is value to it. And really, I mean, I know so many professional athletes now that owe their careers 100% to Red Bull, because without their support of some wacko idea that everybody else said, screw you, get out of my office, a lot of these really cool, innovative sports wouldn't be around, or not around to the level they're at.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. And as fans of that stuff, it's awesome. They've stepped up to the plate. Now, as you go forward, John, you're a dad now, right?
Yeah.
Does that change how you think about what you do?
I mean, it definitely does. I mean, the biggest one probably is just money. Kids cost money, so it makes me turn on my entrepreneur skills even more.
So it's not the safety monger in you doesn't get turned on; it's the entrepreneur that gets turned up.
Yeah, I'd like to say the safety things get turned on. If my wife's listening right now, that it totally does. I swear, babe. But
what's her name?
I mean, it's Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Yeah, she's scared to death. I met her skydiving, but she quit jumping years ago when we started having kids. So luckily she gets it, but she doesn't do it anymore.
How many kids do you have, John?
I got 2 kids, 2 girls.
And what are their names?
Elise and Emmy.
Elise and Emmy, and they're little ones, right?
10, and the little one turns 8. So 10 and 8, basically. Yeah. So they're pretty little. And, my goal before I had kids was, I just had a dream, because I jump into some big football game and deliver the ball to, Tom Brady or somebody, and look around like, one day, man, I don't want this to end before my kids can see dad's doing cool shit. And so they're finally to the age where I know that they'll never forget the thing, because I brought them on really cool things by now, and so I kind of feel mission accomplished as a dad a little bit, where they know that even if I quit doing it one day to the level I'm at, like, they're never going to forget what dad did.
And excuse my ignorance, but how old do kids need to be before they can fly with you?
Well, since they were 2, I took them in the wind tunnel machines.
Yeah.
Which are exactly we train in those nonstop. Those things, the iFly wind tunnels, are exactly like skydiving, but the sensation's different because you're not falling, but skill wise, it's the same. So I took them flying right away. In America, you have to be 18 to go on a tandem, just because of lawyers are everywhere.
Yeah.
But in most other countries, like in Mexico, if you fit into the harness, you can jump. In Europe, my wife started jumping.
Are you allowed to do it even after you've had some tequila too?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because I would think at least a shot of tequila would help before doing this shit. But
when we're down there, we have a saying, we go, whatever, it's Mexico. But yeah, it's like my wife started skydiving. She's from Belgium. And she started skydiving at 15. So the laws are all different. It's basically, it's as safe as you make it. I don't know. I wouldn't want my kids to jump yet because there's some decision making that I think you have to have a little bit more age under your belt before you make life decisions. But
you could see strapping them on in their teens.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But on the same note, I have no desire to push them towards what I do. If they want to, they have a dad that could pave a road for them for sure. But I'm trying to get them to find their own passion in life and pursue it and not chase what dad does, because their mom's a lawyer. I'm a skydiver. So they got a big range to look in between of what they want to be,
I love it. And is there anything else, Jon, before we kick out, anything you want to share?
Not so much, besides I tell everybody, like, you have to go make one jump in your life. It's something that you have to check off your list, whether you're afraid of heights or whatever your fears or reasons for not going. There's nothing like it in the world. And most everybody checks it off their list and never come back to it. And that's enough. Like, just feel what it's like to surrender everything for that 1 minute. It'll change your life for sure, even if you only do it once.
So I've never done it, and I have a question for you, and it's probably a terrible question to put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
But what would it cost to jump with you? Because I would jump with you.
Well, here's the funny answer to that is I've been creative enough to never get my license to take people on tandems because I realized I wanted to do a different avenue. And I watched way too many people be tandem masters, get stuck into making money, and all they do is take cargoes of meat on rides. So I would easily take you on a jump and film you and strap you to one of my teammates, because everybody else has that license. But
well, I would feel comfortable doing this with anybody on the Red Bull Air Force. That I would do, because
well, if you want to do a beautiful jump, two of my teammates live up in Lake Tahoe. I used to live up there for many years. And my teammate Mike Swanson just opened Skydive Truckee Tahoe. It's right on the Truckee Airport.
I used to live in Truckee.
Yeah, so he went through a lot of political BS, and after a few years of fighting people, they allowed him to open a skydive center right at the Truckee Airport. So
yeah, they have a good restaurant at the Truckee Airport, which is
the
a very unusual thing.
Wagon or red something red.
Yeah, isn't that weird that there's a restaurant that's actually kind of good at the Truckee Airport?
Yeah, strangely, a lot of small airports have that, the little fly-in gym restaurants.
So Mike is a member of the Red Bull Air Force. Is that he flies with you?
Yeah, and he has almost the same. He was on the Transformers movies, all the movies. Like, he's who I won all my world championships with and stuff. So we met back in the early '90s in Arizona with the same. He has virtually the same story as me.
So I can go fly. If I can't fly with you, I can fly with Mike, which is what I hear you saying is kind of the same thing as flying with you.
Exactly.
Maybe even better, because he knows how to fly with people. Maybe you'd throw me into that wall.
Yeah, who knows?
My wife might try to pay you off. She's Italian, so they have nefarious ways of getting rid of me.
Oh, boy. Oh, yeah.
Well, Jon, I got to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You're a sports hero to me. You're a business hero. I love that you're a category designer pioneering this new world. Anybody that's taking new ground like this, I find exciting. And look, it may sound corny, but, I think for guys like me who are weekend warrior level athletes, like I said earlier, in action sports and adventure sports, we don't have Steph Currys and Tom Brady's that are known outside the sport, but we do have you, and we do have Shane, and we do have so many other amazing athletes who inspire us. I'm a huge Jeremy Jones fan, by way of example.
Yeah.
Backcountry snowboarding, and I just think you guys don't get enough credit, because you inspire the shit out of us, and you give us these incredible experiences. And yet we don't have to risk our lives to have them.
You're welcome.
So thank you. You're a huge inspiration. I love what you do. Man, oh man, from the bottom of my heart, do I want you to be safe, Jon?
Always. Number one goal right there.
Yeah.
Do this till I'm an old man.
And thank you for being a legendary athlete and such an extraordinary pioneer and inspiration.
Oh, well, thanks for having me on your show. It was a pleasure. It's great talking with you.
Oh, I hope you come back.
Yeah, just let me know. I love it.
Thanks, Jon. Be legendary, my friend.
All right.
Whew. There he is. And I want to thank my dear friend, Tim Rode. Tim Rode, thank you so much for making that incredible introduction to Jon. He blew my mind, and I bet he blew everybody who's into Legends and Losers' mind. If there is somebody in your life who you think would love this episode, why don't you email it to them right now? And we would love it if you wrote us a review. If you listen on iTunes, that would be great. YouTube, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever else you get your legendary podcasts. We would like to thank Red Bull, giving wings to people and ideas. HarperCollins, Instant Classic, Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. The book makes a wonderful gift. Equity Directory, connecting startups to the talent and resources they need to build a legendary business at equitydirectory.co. NetSuite, #1 in cloud ERP. Check us out at netsuite.com. One Life Fully Lived. Dream, plan, and live your best life. We have some incredible resources available for free or pretty freaking close to free at onelifefullylived.org. Spiro, the sales app for salespeople and sales managers who like to make money. Check us out at spiro.ai. Pursuingresults.com, the producers of legendary podcasts, and this one too. Interviewvalet.com, podcast interview marketing. If you're a thought leader, get your leading thoughts on podcasts at interviewvalet.com. The incredible book Scale by our friend and guest, episode 88, Jeff Hoffman. He's a mind blower, an incredible entrepreneur, and he's written an important book called Scale. One of my personal favorite podcasts, Stop Riding the Pine, with our friend Jamie J. Check it out wherever you get podcasts. And Doctors Without Borders. We make a difference in the toughest places on planet Earth. Please make a donation today at doctorswithoutborders.org. We'd like to remind you that this oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love you a little bit extra if you shared the shit out of it. All rights do remain disturbed. In the event of business bullshit, please take 2 Legends and Losers episodes and email us in the morning. This oddcast was clearly produced in a studio that does contain nuts, and however, it is never tested on GMOs. Legends and Losers may contain forward-looking statements, backward-looking statements, present moment-looking statements, and completely preposterous statements. Listen to Linkin Park. Support your local parachuter. Don't be lame. Get out of the passing lane. Hey, man, that suit is you. Thank you, Candy Dandy. You're awesome. I love you, Mom and Dad. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Our deepest apologies today go out to the CEO of InfoSum, Nick Halstad. Sorry, Nikki. We just ran out of time for you. That's it, my legendary friends. Thank you so much for investing part of your life with us. We hope to see you again soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.